Hello everybody, it is The Last Raider, and we are back with another video. And today we're going to talk about unrealistic, or the unrealism of SJWs, because you can see right here on screen, you're seeing an excerpt from, or a panel from Captain Marvel, one of the reboots that has gone on, one of the multi-series that has been happening. This is back from 2000, I want to say 13 or 14, where Marvel began drawing women to look like men. They shrunk the boob size down, they widened the waist, they shrunk the butt, they tried to make the arms bigger, they tried to enhance the jaw lines. They took just about every Marvel character at this time and just gave them a big, gigantic tractor-trailer rig dose of testosterone. And what you're seeing on screen is not the one on the left, the woman that looks like a woman, that's not Carol Danvers here. That is an actress who's supposed to play Carol Danvers. Then the other side in the middle, that is the real Carol Danvers, who is a board. Basically, it's a dude. And I got this up here because I want to show this is something that SJWs have been doing for years now, almost a decade. Okay? They've been doing this for almost a decade now, where they've been taking feminine women, and they've been giving them, despite the rules of the universe that these women are in, they have been trying to do what they call, oh, we're going to make this look realistic. No, you're not making it look realistic. You are trying to emulate your reality. When you make something realistic, you try to make it emulate reality. You don't flourish it. You don't enhance it. It looks like reality. The problem is they're not trying to emulate actual reality, because if you look at actual reality, there are plenty of women who go out, discipline themselves. They have self-worth. They believe that their life is worth living and living to the fullest. And to do that, one of the things is you've got to have a healthy body. A healthy body leads to a healthy mind. So they try to be healthy. They have the discipline to eat correctly, to diet, and they have the drive to continue exercising to the point where, their heart's running good and they want a long, fulfilled life. Well, you've got to be healthy to some extent. You've got to be somewhat fit. You've got to eat the right things. SJWs don't believe in this. This is an affront to their reality. They cannot achieve it. Therefore, it does not exist. Do you see where we're going here? So, in order to do this, they have to put out their reality. Well, women should look like men because some of us look like men, because that's usually where lesbians go sometimes. Very rarely do you ever see a lesbian couple that looks like it does on porn. It's usually they both take on about another 200 pounds and they shave their heads. And one of them starts taking testosterone supplements. I'm like, at this point, you would get more gratification in life by just doing a dude. Because at least then he would have the tools to help you out, and also you could then rear a child. Whereas this, you're going to have somebody else enter the relationship somehow to rear a child. Okay? Or adopt, one of the two. Which, in my opinion, I have a problem with adopting, but I have this mindset of if you want to have a fulfilled life as a parent, it's just, you're going to have more fulfillment out of, raising a child that you know is your own. Okay? Because you see some of yourself in that child. Speaking from a dad. But the problem here is they have this idea with Tila, and the excuse with Tila has been the same. We're going to give her a realistic body. They've said this. How many times have we done this? We've done this with She-Ra. We've done this with... what else? We've done this with Captain Marvel. We've done this with Mary Jane to an extent. They've done this with She-Hulk to such a degree. My God, they used an entire trainload of testosterone on She-Hulk. My God, she literally makes, like right now in Marvel, Thor has Chris Hemsworth's body basically, maybe a little more enhanced. She-Hulk is now bigger than he is. She makes Chris Hemsworth's, a character that has an enhanced version of his physique, look like a woman. Okay, that's how bad this has gotten. And it's the idea of we want to erase femininity because femininity doesn't fit our reality because we can't obtain it. We don't have the discipline to obtain the feminine, to eat like a feminine woman does. We don't have the drive to go out and walk or run 2 or 3 miles a day and do sit-ups and do crunches and do push-ups to achieve the body of a feminine woman. We do not have the self-worth to do this. It is not, we don't have that ability, thus it's not our reality, thus we refuse actual reality. We're going to push our reality. So you end up with this bullcrap with Tila, and this started, I believe, with V. V was saying that he was looking at a picture of Tila and he said he couldn't figure out what Tila reminded him of. And then someone made a meme out of it where they removed all the makeup off Tila and took all the hair off. And she looked like a dude. Literally, like this, here on the screen. She looked like a lightly built man. And when called on this, Netflix goes, oh, but we did this like Gal Gadot in Legend of Korra. Number one, let me laugh at this for a minute because Legend of Korra was actually based on an MMA fighter known as, drumroll please, Gina Carano. And if you've ever not, Gina Carano is now, because Gina Carano is not competing. She does not need a finely tuned body. She has a feminine, curvy body now. But when she was younger, when she was in the MMA, she was a fine-tuned machine. If you saw her back in the day, you would say that's not possible. Because she actually had the fine-tuned, near 0% fat, high muscle, extremely toned body. And she still had a cup size the same as she's got now. Okay. People don't realize that. But there's a big difference when your character looks like a man, and then you try to say, oh, we based her off Legend of Korra and Gal Gadot. Well, also on Gal Gadot is not physically built. She has a supermodel's body. Also, Gal Gadot could still kick your ass because she's actually had military training. That should tell you something. This is the stupid thing that they're pulling out. They're pushing their version of reality still. Because when people who do fantasy art, and this is something I've noticed with fantasy art, especially when you do like the Conan the Barbarian stuff, when it comes to the women, they're like, but we want this to be, realistic. Well, there have been HEMA guys that have talked about, especially in the armor category, been plenty of HEMA guys talk about, it's not uncommon for people to fight without armor. Scalagrim, Shadowversity have both made mention to several races. The Zulu in Africa, their entire army was a group of guys in buckskins and feathers. They were bare-chested. They wore skirts of straw, and they fought with spears and oxhide shields. Oxhide was all it would really do is just push the thing out of the way. They did that for lightweight and agility. The Celts were known to fight nude when they would fight the Romans. A lot of them would come out there in the buff and fight the Romans buck naked with everything hanging out. So the idea that, women can't be sexy and wear sexy armor is stupid. It's quite possible to do. Okay? Whether metal armor would be worth a damn in a fight, I guess if a woman's trying to protect the goods, that probably makes sense. You probably don't want scarring, down there, getting those close shaves. You probably want your breasts to look good. That may be the reason for the chainmail bikinis in the first place, for that, for that unnecessary, for that, unfortunate glance that might hit your, your tots. But when it comes down to it, this is something I've noticed, and it's kind of a trope that happens, is when they go in and people who don't know anything about weapons try to decide what weapons are feminine and what weapons are not. Reality, no weapon is feminine. No weapon is really masculine. A woman can wield a weapon just as good as a man. There are some variations to this. There are some exceptions to this rule. Some women can beat men with weapons. And mostly I would attest that to a woman being more apt to being more aggressive than a man is in a fight. Because a man, He gets into a fight, especially even a fist fight. A man gets in a fist fight. There's usually a size up. He can decide whether he's going to whoop the other guy or not. The woman has no chance but to go in with all guns blazing. She has no choice but to take her fighting level from 0 to 100. She has a lot more to lose. She loses the fight. Hey, there are some things she might experience that are worse than death. My uncle would say this a lot of times when he trained his wife how to shoot. A lot of men come along and they said, oh, she's so pretty and little, she wouldn't hurt nobody. And he turned around and looked at them and he said, you're a fool if you think that. She has more to lose than I do. I can decide whether I can beat the crap out of you or not. She has to kill you or she doesn't survive. And she will experience a hell on earth before she dies. So she has to shoot first. And lo and behold, the guy broke into the house and she shot his ass and killed him. Put about 4 rounds into him. And that was it. But like I said, women have a tendency to be more fiercer. So when you put a weapon in a woman's hands and you give her some skill, she's quite lethal with it. But the problem is they have this notion. It's one of the classic example of this is when you say, what would be a woman's weapon? Most people go, oh, a woman, she'd make a beautiful, delicate archer. Archers are not delicate. The one time you would want a woman to have Tila's physique would be as an archer. You're talking a 250 to almost 300-pound bow that you're going to have to pull back repeatedly. Mind you, this is not a compound bow that has pulleys to leverage the bow to make it work better for you. This is going to be a massive bow with large bolts that you're going to have to pull back and fire. Not only just fire, archers were able to let loose arrows like Legolas most of the time. They could just unleash arrows like a machine gun. You give them a quiver and they just start pulling arrows and start firing like mad, sending arrow after the enemy in the hopes that they'll hit them. Sometimes they could be damn accurate. The more feminine weapon, and this is where logic, this is where scientific or form follows function. If you were to go on just the basis of swords, giving a woman a arming sword without a shield is ludicrous. Because an arming sword requires a lot of single-handed strength if you're going by basics. The sword that defies logic is a long sword. Or a katana. Musashi Miyamoto was known for wielding 2 wakizashis. Most women in Aido and Japanese martial arts will wield katanas. Because when you wield a katana, if you hold it with one hand, and I've got a combat katana at the house, it's nothing fancy, it's nothing incredible, it's just something that if you needed to take it into battle, it would work. Okay, it would serve you well in a fight. There's nothing else fancy about it. But with a combat katana, it is built to be used. If you hold it with one hand, it's almost a little heavier than a saber is. You are really having to pull some arm strength to wield it. However, when you slap that hand onto the pommel, the second hand, and you use it like a two-handed implement, its weight almost evaporates. Because the balance of the weapon is designed to be used with 2 hands. Once you implement 2 hands, and I've had a couple of women check this thing out because they've seen it and they've like, they've seen the ninja where, it's like the ninja chick. What is it? The lovely eye patch girl, Yagabage or something like that. I can't remember how you pronounce her name. But a lot of young women in my age saw that anime when they were growing up. They loved anime, especially when the chick come out with a sword. Ryoshi Kenshin is another one. And so when they see this katana that I have in the house, they're like, oh, can I try this? The thing they always say is, wow, this is so light. When you put 2 hands on there, they can wield it and pull around and work it. Same with European swords. You give a person an arming sword, or a woman an arming sword, she's going to have trouble wielding that thing. She's going to need muscle mass to wield an arming sword. But when you've got your character wielding a sword 2-handed, that takes a lot of the weight off of it. And it becomes more efficient. The actual premises of, in fact, the best sword to give a woman probably would be a long sword, similar to Aragorn's Ranger sword or Narsil from the Lord of the Rings movies. It's a long-bladed weapon with a long handle that gives you a lot of leverage and movement. Another thing about the long sword is that its crossguard actually operated as a shield. This is some HEMA shit coming out. But to go even further than that, to show you just how little muscle actually plays into weapon combat, because weapon combat, you got to remember something, especially in, I want to say, Kenjutsu. Kenjutsu, there are two main ways of attacking. There's and for lack of for layman's terms and understanding, we won't use regular terms. If you want to learn these terms, you want to learn the terms, go look them up and go check it out yourself. But I'm doing this in a layman's terms. There's a direct form of cutting, and then there's an indirect form of cutting. And the difference between them is, if you were to put your hand out there and someone were to reach out and strike your hand with a sword and cut your hand, that would be a direct form of cutting. The indirect form of cutting is the opposite. They hold the sword out there, and you hit their sword with your hand and cut yourself in the process. Indirect cutting does not require a whole lot of muscle strength. Neither does, and even direct cutting requires a little bit of muscle strength. It is more control. If you do study Aido and you notice the cutting mats, they will tell you, and you watch these Japanese guys go through this, they'll go, okay, you chopping bamboo or chopping tahi hats, I think mats, the rolled mats. When you're chopping these mats, they'll tell you when they're watching, they're like, yeah, this person put too much strength into it. They pushed too hard because it cut a curved slice into the mat. And we're looking for a single straight, near perfect straight strike, which requires more control. An example of this in anime is Roronoa Zoro. There's a storyline with Roronoa Zoro before he meets Luffy, where he's hitting objects, he's hitting people so hard with his sword that he's damaging the blade. So he's taking the blades and getting them worked on and getting them fixed. And so the guy loans him a sword and tells him, he says, promise me honor bound you won't damage this sword and whatnot. And Zoro has to take the sword, and he can't damage the blade. His honor prevents him from damaging the blade or swinging too hard. So he learns control in one fight. He learns how to control his blade and cut without damaging it. This is a skill. For the best example of this, I remember watching HEMA where they were doing an M1 competition where they have all the people get together and they have like mass mock battles. And one of the gold medal or the highest ranking pole arm fighter, who was a chick who used axes, looked a bit like Starfire's daughter from I Am Not Starfire. She was a big, heavy built girl, and she got out there in a fight and physically bested a guy fighting. And she was good because she understands skill. Skill and a good weapon that's well designed takes away, and even weaponry. Weaponry is specifically designed to take the requirement of strength out of having power. A sword, let me put it like this. Your bare hands have a greater strength requirement than if you were to have a sword. And a rifle has even less of a strength requirement than the sword does. Because of this, the training is often less. You can spend several years becoming a martial artist. A person wielding the sword is more lethal than the martial artist in less time. The average time it takes for a soldier to be trained on a gun, usually about 6 months. Martial arts will require little up to about 3 to 4 years on average to obtain a black belt, if you're putting dedication to it. A sword probably will take about 2 years. Now mind you, this is not saying, oh, you will be the best. This is saying you will be adequate enough to handle a large majority of your problems. If you're going for simple self-defense, you will be able to handle this is all it takes to handle a large majority of the problems you're going to run into. Most of the physical threats you're going to face. These are the time frames it takes with each weapon. This is why guns supersede swords. Even though back in the day, a lot of people sit back and talk about, well, guns defeated armor. No, guns defeated armor not because they penetrated them. The frickin' musketeers wore armor all the time, and they got shot plenty of times. The armor was there to protect them from musket balls most of the time. They stopped wearing armor because back then it required a bit of skill to learn how to wield armor. Since then, we've managed to build more comfortable armor that's flexible. A lot of times, you just slap a vest on, you go into a fight. You're not having to have that physical requirement of high agility or anything like that. But as I said, after chasing that rabbit, as I said, the strength requirement for something like a sword, like a long sword, is very minimal. And this also plays, if you've seen women who are martial artists, they're not super buff chicks. They're usually like, how do I put this without sounding really bad? They're kind of like a black guy who plays a lot of basketball. If you've ever seen a black guy that is dedicated to basketball, he's what they call cut. In other words, very minimal fat. What you're seeing is the skin directly draped over the muscle with the smallest coating of fat possible. He is just rippling with knots all over his body. Most female martial artists look like this. They have good muscle definition. They are toned. And like I said, they are a well-oiled machine. They're not these humongously buff people, because those muscles that make you super buff are just strength muscles. I guess the best way to put that down there would be Goku when he's about to fight Cell. And then Goku is like, he goes to Super Saiyan 2, which actually ends up being false Super Saiyan 2. And he goes super buff. And then Gohan's like, yes, Dad, you did it. And he goes, no, because yes, I've got lots of power, but there's no way in hell I'd be able to keep up with Cell. There's no way I could catch him. So instead, he opts to go back to regular Super Saiyan, and then they work to just being in Super Saiyan form the longest, because then the idea is they're going to outlast Cell in Super Saiyan form. So they get to a point where it's almost hard where it's like they have to physically think to like actually turn off Super Saiyan. So, anyway, yeah, I mean, when these people are sitting back there talking, whenever an SJW looks at you and says, well, we wanted something more realistic, they're not being realistic. It's not your version. It's actually not even your version of reality. It's not even reality, period. They're just pushing a concept that is their reality, as Fourth Age would say. It's their reality they're pushing, and anything that doesn't match their reality is an affront to them. It is evil. That is their word, and their word for evil is racist or sexist or homophobic. They have many words for evil, but they all translate to evil when it's over with. Anyway, folks, I'm the Last Raider. Hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I managed to, take up a little bit of your time today while you're bored. And as always, stay safe, stay frosty. Remember, hit that bell for notification and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And tell me what you think in the comments. And as usual, stay safe, stay frosty. I'll see you guys next video. Bye-bye now.